the recording. So welcome everyone to this week's AI ethics seminar, and a special welcome, of course, to today's speaker, Anna Felländer, who has a background both in government and industry. And she has promised to talk to us about responsible AI and about how to turn theory into practice. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much, Ole. Happy to be here. So innovations humans can trust, that started for me in 2016. When I was affiliated researcher at the Royal Institute of Technology. So as Ole said, I'm an economist, so I spent 8 years at the Ministry of Finance with macroeconomic forecasting, and during the financial crisis 2008, I was at the Prime Minister's office. In learning from that experience was that the reality are not always captured in sophisticated forecasting models, and also that you need a multidisciplinary lens to exhaust a risk landscape. So when I started Swedbank after 10 years at the government, and I became the chief economist, and at that time my peers were studying the cyclical movements, but underneath there was a structured change due to digitalization. So I early started to do research on the hidden productivity gains. That's called a consumer surplus, or a positive externality when you achieve a free service that you're actually willing to pay something for. So comparing official statistics with the new startup system ecosystem with new business models, we did a new productivity measure and inflationary measure. And at that time, when I was the chief economist, my purpose was to create new measures to have fiscal and monetary policy having the right reality to monitor both fiscal and monetary policy. So in 2016, I saw this shift from these positive externalities when AI was implemented in large tech organizations without any guardrails. So I saw that the opposite was happening. We were opting in, but instead of getting free services that we were actually willing to pay for, there was a negative externality, a digital pollution, such as discrimination and privacy intrusion. So I implemented my multidisciplinary research group with a legal, tech, and business ethic perspective. And we started to research on an ethical AI risk assessment methodology. We saw that current regulation that, for example, discriminatory law could not be applied to the tech silos in organizations, nor could it be evaluated. And also that new regulation was supposed to be lagging, as it usually is. And we also saw that the large tech companies, there was an asymmetric information. So clients or consumers didn't actually know or have the knowledge to ask the right questions. And also due to the monopoly situation, the network economy with these platforms, when Facebook failed, there was actually no alternative to go to. So this was back in 2016. Back then, DeepMind had just opened their AI for society, and also engaging in partnership for AI, collecting organizations saying that they want to do fair AI, or claim that they are committed to do fair AI. Yet the problem when I visited DeepMind's societal unit in 2016 was that no one had actually begun to figure out how to help organization identify, measure, and mitigate ethical and legal risks in AI applications. So we got Vinnova funding to test and vet this risk assessment methodology in a sandbox environment. We had a lot of large private firms and public organizations. We had standardization agencies, policy representatives, civil society, and the entire startup, or the different lenses of the academic fields. So we did that for 2 years, and then we did consultancy on the platform, or on the risk methodology, 5 steps, and then we got VC funding to put it on a B2B SaaS platform. At that time in 2022, the market was not mature to screen and assess AI solutions in Sweden. So we changed the business model towards more educational and using the platform for awareness workshop. But as we know what happened 2023 is that generative AI has entered the scene, and also the AI Act is around the corner. So there's a lot of demand for control and oversights of AI risks. So when I was at Swedbank, I studied the productivity paradox, that we saw a lot of gains in the workplace, and also in our leisure time, but we didn't see any productivity in the statistics. And this was due to several factors. So it could be that you don't measure it the right way, hence my research, but it could also be that the organizations are lagging to implement and to have employees have the right skill set. And also there's a reason for the productivity paradox, that you double work. You do one thing with an AI application, but you still keep the old way of doing things. And then the last thing I want to talk about, for being the reason for not seeing the productivity gains in the statistics on digitalization, is that AI has been developed in an organizational silo without any return on investment requirements nor guardrails. So there's studies saying that 80% of what has been developed in the tech silo has not reached market and deployment, and when it has reached deployment, only 60% has been cost efficient. So that is some reasons why we haven't seen it, and hence my excitement that this productivity paradox is now or will be broken. And this is happening extremely fast, and we can question whether this is too fast or. And we also know that tech profiles like Elon Musk and Max Tegmark, they have requested like a break from the development and say that we are getting close to artificial general intelligence and we must pause it. So the thesis that the technology is galloping on one side, and on the other side, the social implications and the ethical considerations or the societal structured and organizational wise, we haven't been catching up. I think that it's not the best way to stop a development, but on the other hand, there has been a lot of standards and also a regulation that has been presented. And this will also speed up the knowledge and the awareness from both society, but also as consumers. So there's different stance. For example, OpenAI has one. They've asked for regulation in the Congress, and the EU Commission has, as early as 2021, presented the first AI regulation. And also in the EU or in the US, the Biden administration has soft commitments with top tech firms to be more explainable and transparent. Also, there's a lot of standards that are being presented. But in my opinion, the EU Act sets the future landscape for regulation. I think also that the US will follow and has opened up for some regulation in the years to come. When it comes to OpenAI and the balance between having a mission to develop artificial general intelligence, but also act in the service of the humans' best acknowledgement. I think there's a conflict here. Of course, there's a conflict, but the most important thing in conclusion is that these tech firms cannot self-regulate themselves. So there needs to be regulation standards, ethical frameworks that is around the corner. So there's no actual need to stop the development as it is now. So the shift, as you all know, from specific AI to generative AI can be explained such as it is general and not specific. It is creating content, and it's also drastically lowering the entry barriers. So as we work with organizations, it is a huge shift in, first of all, it is used, whether you want it or not. Your employees are using generative AI, productified as ChatGPT. And it's also really low-hanging fruits in almost all functions of an organization. And as we work with companies, there's no clear policy. Some organizations say that they ban using ChatGPT, and others do not have any communication. So there's a tendency for uncertainty in using ChatGPT as an input for working in any of these organizational functions you have here in front of you. But it is clear that the theory of general purpose technology, as it goes from being very siloed and used by a few to then be used in one sector and then to be used in every sector, is happening due to generative AI. So it's not that AI is the tipping or is making digitalization a new general purpose technology. It's actually generative AI that is pushing this development, and it's happening now. It's not happening, we can't plan to implement, it's already happening. And the productivity potentials are huge, hence the broken productivity paradox. And the economists, they forecast a boost in GDP with 7% boost. That's in the US and the EU. Now, this boost is due to 3 factors. One is time optimization. So we see that, for example, creative writing, 44% time optimization or reduction. Tax, accountants, etc., 55% time reduction, and writing code, 50% time reduction. So this is the first reason for the productivity gain, time reduction. And the other one, as you can see in the graph here, is an productivity boost in the people working with augmented AI. We also know that the boost by juniors, or studies shown that junior employees, they can boost their productivity, but to a certain degree, and then it falls to or it goes horizontal. But obviously, a lot of productivity gains is in the existing workforce using generative AI to help them augment their capabilities. And number 3 is the job creation. So there's a lot of tendencies to say that that AI will lead to a long, permanent technological unemployment, high unemployment. So we see that productivity gains in the EU has always led to a job increase. So this is good news. A lot of challenges along the way, such as the ethical and job market training, of course. But this is really, really good news. And looking at the labor market, we see that recent research has shown that 1/4 of the future work will be replaced or substituted by generative AI. And on the left side, you see this is office and administration support. This is, I mean, low risk and a lot of repetitive tasks. Legal, and this is important and very interesting due to the fact that we have high-skilled workers here. So the shift is that it's actual supply shock of the left side of the brain. So it's a supply shock of intelligence and hence reduced value. So looking at the right side here, we have the tasks that are being on substitute as building and cleaning, and some of healthcare tasks as the human touch will be non-replaceable. 3/4 of the labor force will be augmented or have an ingredients of generative AI. And it's very interesting to study what AI cannot do. We have a lot of areas in the human skill set where AI falls short. And that is, for example, critical thinking, creativity, intuition, patience, collaboration, and group building, team building. And there's a study shown that in the US, that 7% of executives say that they value soft skills more than AI skills. And that is very interesting. also we see that the job market skill sets are changing. So a study by LinkedIn showed that the past 8 years, there has been changes in the job market with 25% of the skill sets, and looking forward, it will be a change the next 8 years of 65%. So there's a lot of skill sets changes here that organizations need to adjust to. But overall, there's a lot of creation of jobs that we don't know where they are, but where the human skill sets are in focus, and also having jobs to complement and work together with Gen AI. So I've just talked about the positive productivity effects of Gen AI, and I've talked about the value for the overall society if this technology is embraced in a responsible way. Now we come to the risks that needs to be mitigated for, and the ethical and legal breaches is scaling with generative AI, and there's actually a risk exposure that is higher with Gen AI than in specific AI because of the spread. And it has been a Wild West due to the fact there has been no guardrails nor validation processes to handle this. And the tech silos have been working without any supervision, or I don't mean supervision in that sense, but any clear guardrails on how to measure how the solutions are scaling in ethical broader context. So we've seen a lot of incidents and pitfalls. It is increasing with generative AI. And the fact that we see ethical and legal pitfalls is due to bias in data, algorithms, and the teams responsible for handling them. So we, at the Rowley Institute of Technology, working with these organizations, the first thing was to unlock the tech silo, because there was no alignment between, for example, a fairness model and the discriminatory law. So anyhow, we did identify 6 pitfalls or risks. Discrimination, for example, when we have credit scoring models working on historical data that would favor men versus females with the same economic stance due to the history of male economic having a better economic situation. We see social exclusion, for example, when we see algorithms set on profits, engagements, and click, and finding to without the ethical lens, discriminating, for example, low-income zip codes. Harm to safety, for example, when we have health AI in healthcare using male dominated data can harm females. And also we see that chatbots has recommended people to, I mean, the extreme case here is the recommendation to commit suicide. Lost autonomy is about when you manipulate and the actual wanted recommendation engines turns into unethical nudging. So working with with ethical or responsible AI is actually to find out the guardrails here, not to nudge, for example, someone who would game or buy on credit without the right for making autonomous decisions. Privacy intrusion is a large one, also augmented by generative AI. And AI can also create insights that is with different data that is privacy intruded for you. And disinformation and fake news is, of course, a big, huge problem, because you cannot separate what was a content that was created by a human or generative AI. So this is extremely costly for organizations to not have guardrails and not comply to the new EU Act or standards. And the way that we studied, or we began to take this approach, was that we started with the principles, looking at all possible ways of categorizing the requirements that you wanted to have for governance and in every use case to secure and mitigate ethical AI risks. So accountability is a large one, and we see that there's a shift in accountability from the time we worked with companies with specific AI. The head of AI teams was very much in control, but we see the need for control and oversight for non-tech decision makers due to the indisputable cost efficiencies and also the regulation coming up. So there's a lot of accountability in the AI Act that needs to be considered. So there's a shift in accountability from the tech team to actually the CEO or the business, and also to compliance, wanting to comply with the AI Act. And also in the AI Act, there's a lot of focus on transparency. Transparency as such, it can be many things for many different people. And it could be that it can't be transparent, but it could be explainable. But then again, explainable for who, by who. And then, of course, the requirements of having a governance model that can cross-orchestrate these different perspectives. Because transparency is different from a legal perspective, from a business perspective, and from a tech perspective. So we talked about these risk, privacy intrusion, lost autonomy, discrimination, harm to safety, disinformation, and social exclusion. And the established ethical AI, the establishment of AI principle is to reach privacy, autonomy, security, fairness, information, and inclusion. And this is actually part of human rights, and these are being violated as we speak. So the root causes of the risks and what you need to handle is that there's often immature data or AI, so there's no skill set for example, in the tech department to know how to filter the data or make AI go-to-market validation readiness threshold, due to the fact that you cannot see the full picture, and that you cannot compare or work together with the regulation standards nor the context where the solution is used in. So there's a lot of work with organizations to have a validation of sufficient data and trained AI models. There's also root cause for these risks exposure by overuse or misuse of data. So data is very important, and as we see in the new generative AI era, there's a lot of misuse of data. So for example, the IP is very a hot topic when it comes to generative AI using IP from someone else. So for example, Financial Times just locked or shut off the OpenAI to crawl the Financial Times, but instead they decided to work with Google's Gemini. So there's a lot of positioning right now, and also we see that there's a good it's entering a more competitiveness, and also open source is increasing against large closed language models. But the overuse or misuse of data and AI can also be that if you have a droner that is set to detect certain things in the nature, could be in faulty hands, used for detecting idle summer houses for burglaries, etc. And this could be also unintentional. Of course, could be intentional use of AI, but these are the unintentional pitfalls. Bias of the creator, that is when the AI team is unaware of how the solution is scaling in a broader context, and the sets of goals could have implications on a black box AI solution when you really cannot set the guardrails for where you want the goal to have guardrails when it comes to defining a certain level of nudge to a certain cohort, etc. And then data bias, of course, we see that the data is based on historical values and norms. And there's also a recent study that shows that it's actually scaling prejudices, so that the model is actually accentuating what has been biased. So it's a double fault, you can say. When it comes to generative AI, there's both, if you look at productified as ChatGPT, there's of course a lot of faulty content being created, and there's also ethical pitfalls, such as the discriminatory or the bias towards the white Western civilization. And also, if you take Meta and all these models, they're based on chats and conversational. That is also something that you don't. There's a way to define, or rhetoric when it comes to chatting, and another one to. That's why you need to, of course, know the USP of these models. But again, there's a lot of discrimination and faultiness. And also when it comes to the legal and privacy intrusion part, there's a lot of information that we cannot, based on GDPR, we have the right to say, okay, this content creation about a specific, or me, a specific person, is wrong, and I want to report it and claim it. There's no actual process for that. So there's a lot of gray zones, and the AI Act is, of course, in 2003, when the generative AI explosion was a fact, the EU Commission wanted to speed up the process of implementing AI Act. Before, they said that before 2023, the chatbots was actually limited or a minimal risk, and now we know it could be very high and also unacceptable risk. So according to the AI Act, there are some unacceptable, prohibited ways of using AI. For example, social scoring, such as we've seen the Chinese example. It is not the fact that you're in a Uber and you want to rate your driver or your passenger. That's not social scoring. And it's also facial recognition and manipulation. Hence, there's a debate because France and there's been a debate because the French, they want to have facial recognition in their police services. So when it comes to the high risk, there has been some categories that there's some exceptions here, because when we come to high risk, this is about transportation systems, employment, recruitment, and justice systems. And this is where you have to do an extensive reporting. An extensive reporting that is, for example, a risk assessment with a human loop in every step of the AI development. And this changes the way we develop AI, because looking at the development or starting with the design of the AI model to the deployment, there needs to be a human in the loop to do risk assessment based on the end user's severity and probability of harm. Now, a typical AI team in an organization is unable to do this. So you need to have the compliance competence to the ISO risk management standards, but also the business area to know how the solution is used in the end user context. So this is a biggie, and also the explainability and transparency and the robustness of the system. You cannot use the GDPR governance methods because it's constantly evolving. And that is a problem itself in the AI Act, that the fact that it's constantly evolving is creating some contradictions in the AI Act. So there's still some gray zones, still some unclarities, but the regulation is formulated that there's a lot of flexibility. Hence, you can add the list in or take away the list in the high use case. It's like the second best, this regulation. It might hit bluntly and hamper innovation and productivity, but it could also lead to an disproportional burden for SMEs. But on the other hand, it can create a lot of clear guardrails. And also there's a cost of each country creating their own AI standards or own AI regulations. And this is a second best shot, I would say, that could be blunt, but it's formulated in a flexible manner. And the alternative is not something that we would want, because the alternative would lead to that we will in the end mistrust this technology. So we want to have a sustainable way of trusting this technology so we can really embrace the value of it. Now, I talked about the risk assessment, and I have 5 minutes left, and this is the core of the platform, actually, to cross-orchestrate and detect early. And the graph that you see on the right side, it's the relative cost for mitigating AI, depending on where on the AI life cycle or stage of development you're in. So in a traditional organization, the compliance team or legal team, they would look at a product or service when it's finished, and then they would say yes or no. Now, this is not how it's going to be working, because that's going to be super expensive. And you have to do it all again. So the best way is to design in the building, the design of it, case and scoping and data collection, always do the impact assessment with the perspective of tech, legal, and business. And cross-orchestrating this is actually not a red tape on the tech team. On the other hand, it gives a license to operate and to accelerate AI implementation. That's what we want. We want clarity. What should AI do? Not what can AI do. What should we do? And also how it is related to the business. So this is good news also for finance and return on investments. And for the compliance team, this means the necessity of full control and oversights of AI risks. This is actually not 6%, this is 7%. Huge sanctions, huge sanctions. This is a biggie. And the product team is, of course, really getting a lot of value for this validation threshold. And for a CEO in our organization, this is ensuring that you don't lose consumers by reputational harm. And for the board, this is like AI or cybersecurity was a couple of years ago or 25 years ago, when you didn't know how to report or create metrics on how to decrease the risk exposure. Now you need, number one, you need an accountable person in an organization. Could be in the compliance team, could be in the business team or the AI team. But the most important thing is that you have an AI compliance, responsible AI compliance officer. Now looking back for GDPR, that was data protection officer, and also in security, that was cybersecurity officer. So number one, accountable person. Number two, you need to report. And you need data-driven support for reporting and being able to map in a key risk indicating manner how you control and decrease the risks. Anyway, this is our platform. It is orchestrating this way. We have 200 questions meta tagged to more than 20 features that creates more than 500 million unique insights reports. And this is so important because the tech mitigation tools, the AI mitigation tools, they are developed by AI engineers and used by AI engineers and only understood by AI engineers. And that doesn't make sense if you want to report it to the board or the regulatory body or a standardization agency. So you really need to contextualize the AI solution, both from where it's used and a regulatory context. So having the threshold or trade-off between precision and the way to the capability to explain, or the trade-off between fairness and precision, these are critical business decisions that cannot only be decided on the tech team. You need a full organizational and business value lens on that. So I want to summarize. I'm so happy and also a bit frightened that the development is moving fast. It will create a lot of challenges on the labor market, but a fantastic productivity explosion and new jobs. Human skill sets will be put higher on the value chain. So working and doing research on AI will have the features of societal and legal competences as well. And the cross-functional orchestration is important in academic and organization and private and public sector. So the need for an ethical and societal lens is a prerequisite for innovation and commercialization of AI. We have to put a little more friction, and what seems to be slow will by the end of the day be fast. So I want to thank you for my time, and I'm looking forward for 15 minutes of discussion, questions.
Thank you so much, Anna, for this very illuminating talk. I'm going to open up the floor here for discussion. Maybe you can take down the slide so we can all see each other better, and I encourage people, if they want, to turn on their cameras. So maybe we should start with Basir, who raised a number of comments in the chat. Would you like to start with whatever you feel is most pressing of the items that you've lifted so far?
First of all, Anna, it was a great presentation. Thank you very much. And how wonderful it is to have a seminar and a research from an economist where you're able to take into account numerous stakeholders. I would rather leave you to pick up the questions because you may want to bundle them up. So I'll just leave it all to you and Oli.
Okay, Anna, do you have the chat in front of you?
Yes.
Is there anything Basir has written here you want particularly to address?
What are some of the things that surprised you and led changes? Back in 2013, argued that this regard to privacy and information integrity is far less in private sector. Has the respect to privacy and information integrity reached to acceptable scale? No, I mean, this is the surprise for me is that consumers they've so much more value the time efficiency, the tailorization, and the benefits from opting in and using ChatGPT than the risks. So I'm surprised that there's been so low awareness. For example, when it comes to LinkedIn, right? There's a lot of existing biases and discrimination within LinkedIn that we don't tend to be critical about. We're just accepting and thinking that that is normal. So I'm surprised that the consumer voice has been so dampened, and even now that we see that the Biden administration and EU Act, there's actually a lot of dopamine being created in social media, and that we really we tend to be blind for having a critical eye on these low-hanging fruits that are really shaping the children of our society. Is that Basir, is that a good answer, you think?
It makes perfect sense. So a lot of red teaming to scrutinize it, investigate it, but I guess also advocacy and raising awareness on the consumer part. So those are great marching orders. Thank you very much.
There is more on Basir's list. Maybe we can come back to that, but I want to encourage the rest of the audience. Do raise your hand, or you could even just grab the microphone and ask your question if you have one.
Actually, I want to hear from you in the research community, because there's a lot of frightenness that you won't be able to do your research in the EU, that the commercialization of your research won't be applicable here. And I would really like to hear how the dialogue goes here and how you look at the future in the EU.
All right. Do we have anyone who is up to commenting on that? That would be very interesting.
But Ola, you have
Yeah.
so many of these seminars.
Yes.
How is the response on actually doing the research and the fear of not being able to continue or deploy or have more research into this field due to potential sanctions where it is used?
I'm not sure that in this seminar series we have had much discussion of that. I have sensed this fear among colleagues in some other contexts, along also with a fear that the policy of the leading tech companies not to open source their material makes life more difficult for AI researchers elsewhere. I don't personally share that particular fear. I have what I consider to be bigger things on my mind, but that is something that is sometimes discussed in the corridors of at Chalmers and elsewhere.
Is that related to that that we will reach artificial general intelligence much earlier than we think and it will be used to against and harm people? Is that more of the discussions?
That's a whole separate discussion, I think, or at least it's a discussion that is pushed by other parts of the community. So it's more like this open source rhetoric seems to me more closely connected to a fear that the leading tech companies will cement more power in the long run and make it harder for other actors to compete. And also related to this is the regulatory capture issue. But now I'm mentioning things that are not really my own concerns. It would really be better if someone who actually represents these particular concerns would talk about them. Now we have Basir on the line again, raising his hand. Please.
I have taken part in EU projects as an expert and participant, but do not know the exact scheme. But it is my understanding that EU wishes to have the funds serve as an equalizer. Cutting edge research is conducted and that it reaches to the broadest available population. But one safeguard that can be implemented is a dual use concern. Any technology that you develop, if it is possible for it to be used in a military context, it could be safeguarded through a classification system or a community of interest where, could be formed. I mean, there's already community of interest in AI within the EU that could be broadened. So that way, cutting edge research can be much more easily presented and equally protected. I mean, this is just what I'm thinking. So I'm not the expert, just the impression that I'm getting.
Right. Thank you. So have you taken any courses where you have the legal aspect? Is there any courses offered in your environment where you can learn about the socio-legal aspects of what you work on or research on AI has? Is there
So
any?
maybe if we direct that question to Carl Define Licht, maybe he knows whether there's any activity at his department of this kind.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for a great talk. I actually had a question, but I wanted you guys to finish off talking about this. I'm at the Department for Technology Management and Economics. So that's why I directed you to me. And I don't think we have any of those courses, tailored to AI in particular. Or I would think that I would be quite sure that we don't. But we have these sort of more broadly digitalization courses where we also have ethics and law and stuff like that imbued into them. But I'm not sure. So those are for our students. I mean, for faculty, we don't have anything like that, what I know. The question, I guess, would be no when it comes to that. But I had another question. For you.
Before you ask that, Carl, let me just mention we have a comment in the chat from Benjamin saying that they have courses in Lund covering this.
Yeah, that's with Stefan Larsson, right?
Aha, okay.
I guess because I founded NKI together with Stefan back in 2018.
Yeah. Sweden is a small country. Okay, forgive me, Carl. And now you go ahead and ask.
No worries. That's great to hear, and that's good for me to know as well. So I was just thinking about. So I haven't read that much about replacement and sort of prognosis for replacement when it comes to AI. And one thing I was wondering about, you had your graphs there about, what sort of works that would be replaced and so on, laws and such. And I was just wondering if they have factored in sort of the legal aspects into those prognoses. Because, for instance, you could imagine today that you could implement, as they have done in Arizona, self-driving cars when it comes to taxis, for instance. But we cannot do that in Sweden because it's against the law. Similarly, we could have chatbots much more in healthcare, but we don't do that because that's against the law. And several of these sort of big institutions have their own regulations, and they're not that easy to change. So I was just thinking about whether or not they have factored in those kind of things when they've made their prognoses. Because that the technology might be there, that's one thing.
Yeah,
but that sort of like the society is there as well is another thing.
Yeah. So the 7% GDP boost is if we have a societal and organizational change to embrace the value. So they haven't done it to that extent. They've just prerequisite that there will be adjustment. But of course, it will be interesting to see where it will flourish and what societal structure, organizational structure is too robust to even have a return on investment, since it would be so much hurdles. So that's going to be interesting to see. I mean, and I also listened to Pia let me see her name. She would say that if we in both tech startup and organization and academic, if we talk about responsible AI too much, she said, I'm going to show her, the name of her, and she said that could create that the politicians take a step away. But this is pure politics. I mean, this is regulation, labor market politics. So they need to step in a way that they haven't before, not leaving this to researchers and organizations. Let me see what her name was. So her name was Maria Rönnblom. She's professor in political science at Karlstad University. So there's not enough like conviction that the politicians has to step up, make a stand, increase their knowledge, communicate with engineers, and so that is, and it could also, I think in the Nordics, I think we can really do responsible AI like best in class, because we have a tradition of combining sustainable business models with values. So I think I'm asking for a politician to grab this and make it Sweden's expertise. This is where you want to go if you want to do responsible AI, going from theory to practice. And that is actually a good summary, right, Olle?
Yeah, very good. I very much like that. I just want to make sure that I understood the Maria Rönnblom point correctly. Does she suggest that we take a step back?
No, absolutely not. She's saying like we as both researchers and private sector, public, we talk about responsible AI, trustworthy AI, ethical AI principle. It's from a VC perspective, there's a niche that is ethical AI governance. I mean, that is a hype, but that she said that might lead to politicians taking a passive stance, as they have done, because everything about trustworthy AI is policy. I mean, that it is pure policy and political leadership topic to say this is how we in Sweden are gonna use AI for societal good and to create guardrails and have sandboxes and use cases, best practices, etc.
All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Benjamin.
That's the link to what we were talking about? Yes. Very good. We are out of time. Thank you again, Anna, for the wonderful talk, and thank you everyone who contributed